Hi everybody, I'm building roads in Oak Hill, and I'm using the Woodland Scenics paving system with Smooth It, I think is what they call their plaster. It works okay. I just had a bunch of it. I bought a bunch of it. I sort of, if I didn't have it, I might have investigated another method of building roads. I might have tried the grout, or I might actually even have tried styrene, although that might be kind of expensive for as many roads as I'm building here, but I think that would be a really good method. I've seen some people do some excellent roads with styrene. But I want to tell you about a little problem I'm having. So this is foam, and I just painted it brown with this really cheap craft paint. You know, those things you get for $1 in the bottle at Walmart or something like that. Well, the tape that Woodland Scenics gives you, when I stick it down, and you're supposed to have two pieces, and then you fill it with plaster, and then drag it along to smooth it out. I'm having a heck of a time getting it off. It just does not want to come off after I put it on there. Well, of course, this piece is going to come off. It tears, and well, of course, this piece came off. That's funny. But you can see, like here, that piece didn't come off. And when I was up there, after I poured the plaster, it was coming off, and it was bringing big chunks of the brown paint with it, leaving big green swaths. I had to go back and repaint. I'll sort of move the camera and sort of show you up here, like right there. You know, after I poured the plaster, it was just taking big chunks. You can see where I've had to touch up the paint in here. So I thought, well, what can I do? There's something else I can use. So I started looking through my scrap box, and I've got these I-beams. They're evergreen, polystyrene. It says H column. Item number is 284, and it's fairly close to the same thickness. It's a little taller than the tape, but I decided I would try it. So what I did, and I don't know if you can see this, maybe, but I drilled a hole in the H-beams about every inch, and I'm holding it down with straight pins. So another sort of advantage that is that we're talking about making easements on our curves, on their railroad tracks. Well, cars have easements too. They're not just all right angle curves. They have swooping curves. So this stuff bends pretty easy, and it sort of leads itself into making easements more so than the tape does. So what I've done is my roads are 26 feet wide. It's a little bit narrow. If I was going to have parking on each side, obviously that'd be impossible, for like a main street or something like that where people have parking. But for a 2-lane highway through the country or whatever, where there's no parking on the sides, just a gravel berm, this is okay. Looks okay. So what I do is I take this piece of balsa wood, and I put one of them in place, and I just I work my way down and just put straight pins in, and then I've got proper spacing for my roads. After I pour the plaster, I can all the plaster goes down here. You can just pop it out and reuse the styrene again. Again, the road's a little bit thicker than I like, but that gives me room to sort of sand down and make a berm on the sides, and I'll have some gravel too. It's not just going to drop off into grass probably. But just a problem I had, and just my way of overcoming it. I know there's a lot of different ways of making roads. This is something I decided to go ahead and use what I already had. So I'll sort of take the camera and walk up here. So this I have coated it with a skim coat of like patching compound. I call it drywall mud, and then I'm trying to take a sponge and smooth it out. because it's got little striations and stuff, but I think it looks, pretty good when I get done. So I'm going to continue with this method. And so if you use the smooth it, I've already actually sanded this quite a bit for the berm. Right? It's got a crown in it now. And since I put that layer of drywall mud in, I'm going to sand it a little bit more. But I'm going to come in and put a curb, or a sidewalk here. So it'll have a curb. And then there are going to be some buildings here. So, hey, I just wanted to tell you what I was working on. Not getting a lot done because I worked, really long week. But, I've got the rest of today. Worked this morning, got the rest of today. Anyhow, so I'm going to try to work on this, and I've got some time tomorrow. It's starting to get hot and humid outside again, so I'm going to be working in here, not on the Garden Railroad. Anyhow, if I have anything else that I get done, I'll share that with you before I post the video. But have any questions or comments, let me know. There's probably a lot of people that have either already figured this out on their own or have a different method, so please share that with me if you would. This is where I've poured the roads. I decided to not have the road curve and come all the way to the end of the layout. Just be an extra 2 feet of road that's, really not going to add anything to the layout. So I decided to bring it straight off. And that'll give me more room in here to model something else. And I said I was going to have a swamp, and I plan on having a little swampy area in there. So right now I've been touching up with joint compound, and so after it's mainly around where the rails are, so after it's all dry, I'll pull off the styrene and clean it all up, sand it, and paint it. I think it'll look okay. I'm going to talk about something else in Oak Hill that I've made a decision on. So I went back and I looked at aerial photos of Oak Hill again, and decided that really Main Street needed to be wider. Main Street has parking on both sides. It's unlike, this is Main Street. Route 93 is coming this way. So I've made it wider. Basically, I kept the center section where it was, and I had some smooth that already mixed up from my, when I poured the other section of road. So I just put some styrene down. I actually used tape on this one side because I already had the smooth it mixed up. Didn't have a lot of time to prep another piece of styrene, so we'll see how that works out. Yeah, and I tried to blend the two. So I wet the plaster down in the middle just so it doesn't suck all the moisture out of the plaster that I was pouring on, beside it and on top of it. Let that dry, and then now I have taken some drywall mud and I've actually tried to smooth it out, and I'm letting that dry. Also, on the other side of the tracks, it needed to be wider. Again, looking at aerial photos, especially historic photos, there's a pretty wide sidewalk up through here, and then the depot platform started. So I'm going to have to incorporate all that. So I don't know if you notice or not. I'll try to sort of zoom in, but I've made the executive decision to not try to have Main Street continue on into the backdrop. I only have about 2.5 inches here, and it's not going to be very easy to blend that into the backdrop and make it look good. This is basically a paper that I took in Oak Hill last time I was there of what it would look like if I was standing at this intersection looking up there. I think it'd be very difficult to blend that in that amount of distance. So what I'm going to do, at least for now, I'm going to just have this be like business buildings, sort of like design, well, the DPM, design preservation model, something like that. Just generic downtown buildings for a small town downtown. Eventually, I may try to duplicate one or two of the signature buildings. I'm going to show you some historic pictures here and talk about them. I may try to do that because the building that sits behind the depot, where the depot was, is a very distinctive building, and it'd be kind of neat to have that. But to be honest with you, most of us, when we model, we're modeling the area directly around the railroad. Not, if we say we're modeling Chillicothe, we're talking about Chillicothe Railroad tracks, not the town of Chillicothe. I don't know a whole lot of modelers that actually try to duplicate all the buildings downtown or something like that. You know, again, we'll try to copy the railroad station, we'll try to copy some of the railroad buildings and maybe some of the industries, but not just like a downtown business. So I don't want to have the same buildings as everyone else on the layout, but for now, that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to modify them a little bit so they're a little bit more distinctive, but I'm not worried about someone says, oh, that's the old pharmacy in Oak Hill. You know, I'm not worried about that. There's two buildings that I would, and I'll show you on the aerial photos, that I may try to eventually try to duplicate. There was a restaurant that sat right here. Now it's a food bank, but at one time it was a restaurant. It was a Western Auto store. It's just, it looks like it's empty now to me, but it was a restaurant sat right here. And then the building, like I said, back behind it, which I've showed you pictures of before, and I said I think it was a theater, just because the marquee. Well, pictures of it taken in like the 1940s said it was a Shell station. And there's a gas pump sitting in front of it. It doesn't look like any gas station I've ever seen, so I can't imagine it was built as a gas station. But by later in its life, it wasn't a theater, so I don't know what it was. But the building directly over here, if I continue Main Street on, this is just a grassy field. There were buildings there, but they've been torn down or burnt down or whatever. There's a couple buildings here that are original, but then the building behind it, which was a big like 3 or 4 story building, is gone, been burnt down, torn down, again, whatever. So I'm just going to put a row of buildings here and not worry about trying to blend it into the backdrop as much. You know, maybe 3 or 4 small businesses. Again, I'm more worried about the Oak Hill railroad buildings than I am the, you know, other buildings. So enough talking. I'll go ahead and wrap this up. Next week, hopefully through the week, I'll be able to have some time in the evenings to sort of clean these roads up, put the grade crossings in. I won't have them completely done because, you know, as I'm working on other scenery, I could mess them up. But I am going to just paint the, you know, put a basic gray coat on so it doesn't look like that. But might have beginnings of sidewalks in place. You know, we'll see. So here's the building that I thought was a theater. I think this would be a cool building to duplicate. Obviously, there were buildings to the left that faced not only Front Street but also Main Street, but they're long gone, and I'm not sure when they left. This is empty now. So here's the building in the 1930s when it was a gas station. This building is across the tracks from where the depot was. It's still there today. This picture is obviously taken in the 1940s. So I may try to eventually duplicate that building as well. It's sort of a signature building on the layout. This is probably in the 1980s, judging by the car. Here's the building today. I think it may be empty. And here's a view showing both buildings, or the relative locations, so I think it would be good if I could sort of duplicate those. And this is obviously in the Chessie era. The other thing I'll try to finish up this week, I still have 3 of the 3D cars to finish up. I just went ahead and painted 2 of them white. The other one I thought was a maroon when I bought the paint, but it actually looks a lot more purple than maroon. I don't know if there are a lot of purple cars around in 1980. There are probably a few, but not that many. But I'm just going to go ahead and go with it. I don't want to have every car be exactly the same. But I should have those finished up next week. So I'm waiting for the plaster to dry. I'll probably work on the cars and work on some other stuff. So until I talk to you next, everybody stay safe.